You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Royal Rumble Recap on the Angry Marks Podcast Network. I am your host tonight, Frank Vaughn, joined by my colleague, C.W. What's up, brother?
Not much tonight. Just got through watching the women steal the show at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. I'll tell you what, it was the main event, so we're going to get to that last because a lot happened that we need to unpack with that match. So what do you say we start at the top? I'm going to stick with the main card tonight and just go from there. Honestly, I didn't watch most of the pre-show. I did see the Bobby Roode Mojo Rawley match. Bobby Roode retained the U.S. title in that match, so really not a lot to talk about there. The main card kicked off tonight with AJ Styles taking on Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn it was a sort of weird handicap match where if Owens and Zayn, either one of them pinned or submitted AJ Styles, then both of them are going to be the co-WWE champions. Really bizarre sort of thing. I was telling somebody about that the other day, and they reminded me that this actually happened once before in WWE, but it was with the Divas Championship. It was when Michelle McCool and Layla El had the titles together. So I'll be honest with you, that's one of those dime store gimmicks that I didn't want to see resurrected for the lineal championship in this company. You know, I mean, we have the Universal Championship on Raw, but the WWE Championship on SmackDown is the lineal championship that you can trace back through the history of this company. And I really believe that title deserves better than some cheap gimmick like that. So I am glad that the match didn't end with either Zayn or Owens winning, but there was some controversy with the finish there. What did you see there? Did Zayn get the tag to Owens, or did he miss him? What do you think?
With the angle they provided and the one they used on replay, it looked like he completely missed him. But
that's what I saw too. So you've got this controversy now of Owens wound up taking the pin, but from what we saw on camera, he wasn't legally tagged into the match.
And that's, I think that the strategy that Owens and Zayn were using backfired on them in that respect because it got too chaotic for the referee to be able to keep up with what was going on at the end. So their strategy backfired.
Right, and speaking of backfiring, boy, did they pick the wrong person to complain to after the match. You know, that over the last few weeks, over the last couple of months, we've seen this dynamic between Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan, where Daniel Bryan has found himself in the uncomfortable position of having to defend Owens and Zayn against Shane McMahon. And Shane McMahon has been the one that's been gunning for him. I mean, just going, balls to the wall trying to get them out of the company. He threatens to fire them almost every week for some reason or another. And so who did Owens and Zayn choose to go to complain about it? You would think they would go to Daniel Bryan, right? No. They went to Shane McMahon tonight, and as you can imagine, not a lot of sympathy there.
Well, I think that the way that they went about it was a little bit off. It felt off, like it didn't have the right feel to it. It felt awkward. It had an awkward.
Well, the whole match was awkward, just the way it was set up. A handicap match for the championship, like really. And then the screwy way that it ended, and then they go to Shane McMahon to complain about it, and of course he used their whole "yep" movement thing against them in a cute little line there. But in the end, AJ Styles is still your WWE champion, and as the commentators, I think Corey Graves was the one that pointed it out. The referee's decision is final. Now, we've seen dusty finishes before where, somebody will win a title match and then they'll go back and reverse it later. I don't think that's going to happen in this case. I don't know what's going on with this whole angle. It feels like something bigger is going to happen at some point. And let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room if we can, okay? I've heard all the rumors about Daniel Bryan maybe having an impending return at some point. He's been cleared by doctors everywhere. There are rumors that WWE is actually considering lifting his retirement, his mandatory forced retirement, whatever, but they haven't cleared him medically yet either, obviously, because he didn't compete tonight. And it seems if they had already medically cleared him, he probably would have been in the Royal Rumble match. But he didn't participate tonight. So I've heard all those rumors. I don't know if this is all a very slow-boiled build up to Daniel Bryan wrestling at WrestleMania. I don't know what all this is, but if there's nothing bigger on the other side of what we've already seen, then they need to move on from this whole angle, because I don't know how many more ways we can milk this whole Owens and Zayn and AJ Styles and Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan gimmick that's been going on. You know, there are so many layers to this thing, but we keep retreading over old ground at this point. So if they're not about to pull the trigger on some major, massive, holy crap like development with all of this, then I'm not sure why we're still doing it.
AJ Styles has undoubtedly put on some of the best work. This, whatever they're building up for, I don't know what they're building up for, but whatever they're building up for, AJ Styles has definitely. And you can't. The thing about being a workhorse is after a while it starts to wear down on you. And you could tell tonight's match really, while AJ was stellar in the match, you could tell that conditioning wasn't where it needed to be in the match. You could just look at his face and tell he was bright red in the face towards the end of the match. His body language was more of him taking deeper breaths, trying to get more oxygen in. So while he has been the workhorse of it, you cannot keep putting this all on AJ Styles to make everything look like it's.
I agree, and here's the thing about AJ Styles. Okay, this guy's been going hard for 2 decades in the wrestling ring. Yes, he only came to WWE 2, 3, 4 years ago, but he's been going hard in the wrestling ring for 2 decades now. The man's almost 40 years old. Okay, and he wrestles night after night after night after night. He's wrestling a full schedule, and he was in a handicap match tonight. So Owens and Zayn could tag in and out and take a rest. He did not have that option. So he had to carry the entire match. And Owens and Zayn are 2 very different style of wrestlers. So he had to wrestle one style and then switch to another mid-match with no rest, and being 40 years old, and having 2 decades worth of mileage on his odometer in a wrestling ring. So at this point, I've got to wonder if we're not going to actually make some massive blockbuster sort of thing out of all of this, then why do we keep doing it? It's very clear to me at this point that AJ Styles is probably not going to drop the WWE Championship to either Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn. And if he were to drop it, it would probably more likely be Kevin Owens than Sami Zayn, because I still don't get the sense with Sami Zayn that he has the confidence of the brass in WWE to carry a championship like that. I still don't have that feeling that they're ready for him to be a world champion. So
the thing is we might not even get to see anything come of this at this point, because, okay, we have the way everything has been set up. You have everything building up to where it looks like they're trying to do something with Shane versus Daniel Bryan, but then tonight, you kind of killed some of that build up when you have them both at the end of the Rumble match in the room. That didn't help that build up there.
Well, I need WWE to decide once and for all what they're going to do with Daniel Bryan. I just need for them to make their minds up, and let's move on from this point to that place, okay? We saw last year before last, on the Talking Smack show that used to be on the network, we saw Daniel Bryan and The Miz get into a back and forth that wound up turning into a whole big blow-up. And at first I thought, okay, well, maybe they're trying to make an angle out of that, but then nothing came of it. And then they ended up moving Miz over to Raw, and nothing more since then. Although I was at Raw 25 in Brooklyn on Monday night, and when The Miz came out to the ring to wrestle Roman Reigns for the Intercontinental Championship, he and Daniel Bryan had a really awkward moment at the top of the ramp where they just stopped and stared at each other before The Miz continued on down to the ring for his match. So they still keep teasing this whole thing between those two. Then you've got Daniel Bryan having problems with AJ Styles. He's got problems with Shane McMahon. They keep teasing Daniel Bryan having heat with different people like he's going to actually get in the ring and settle it with them. But then day after day, week after week, month after month, and now year after year since 2014 or 2015, we keep getting word that WWE is not going to clear him to wrestle again. And we keep hearing on the side that if he can't wrestle in WWE, then when his contract runs out later this year, he's just going to leave and go wrestle somewhere else. If they're not going to let the man wrestle, they need to stop teasing feuds between him and other people. They just need to quit with that. because all that's doing is creating an expectation among the fan base that there's actually going to be a payoff to that. If there's not going to be a payoff, then they need to knock it off. That's it. Let the man just be general manager until his contract runs out, and then he can go to Ring of Honor or New Japan, or he can wrestle in a bingo hall. It's up to him. But they need to quit teasing him actually getting in the ring to settle his differences with people if they're not going to let him do it.
That's my exact opinion. Cause if they don't do anything with Daniel Bryan, the man is still talented enough that he can go to anything he wants, and he's damn sure better than Cody. And look at what Cody's done.
Yeah, Cody's really getting over in New Japan right now, but Daniel Bryan does not need to be factoring so heavily into wrestling feuds if they're not going to let him wrestle. That's all I have to say about that. So, as of now, it's still your WWE champion. His retention of the is shrouded in controversy because it looks, at least from the camera angle we were given by WWE, that he pinned the wrong guy tonight. And I don't know where that's going to go from there. At the very least, it guarantees that this feud between AJ Styles and Cammy, as they keep calling these guys, is going to continue for some time. We may see this ride all the way to WrestleMania. I don't know. All right, so the next match, Usos versus Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable for the SmackDown Tag titles, and this was the best 2 out of 3 falls. You don't see a lot of matches that feature more than one fall, but this one did, and I don't know. What did you think of this match? I mean, I watched it, and I really expected more than I got, I think.
Something felt really off about the second pinfall. Like, it felt like it felt like it wasn't supposed to end there. If you understand what I'm trying to say, everything felt awkward. You could even tell on the Usos' face, the look on their faces initially, that something wasn't right. Like when the camera first cut to them, you could tell, oh shit, something's not right. And
yeah, it made me wonder if somebody got hurt during the match and they just had to, change the ending on the fly. I don't know what happened there, but you're right. That first fall, they teased that. There were so many false finishes to that first fall. Like, there were several times when I thought, okay, that's it. That's the fall. And then somebody would kick out. It was insane, that first fall. Usually you save all that drama for the end of a match, but they really milked the first fall to the point where once it happened, it was like, okay, I can't wait to see what's going to happen for the next one. And I swear within 2 minutes there was a roll-up pin and the whole match was over. And I was just sitting there like, wait, that's how this ends? Like, yeah. Really?
It didn't feel complete. It felt like, because, a match is supposed to be like a story. You have the beginning of the match where it's just like the beginning of a story. You get to know the characters, and then during the middle of the match, you start to have, where your good guy faces the bad guy, and they battle back and forth a little bit, and then, one side might get a little bit of a victory over the other, and then the other side comes back, and with this, you never had the comeback. It was like, okay, where's the comeback at? Where it just felt cut off.
It did, and that roll-up pin at the end to end the match was just, I mean, after all the drama surrounding the first fall, for the second fall to end that quickly, I'm going to make a statement that's probably going to get me in trouble with some of our listeners, but I've never been afraid of doing that before, so why start now? I'm okay with the Usos retaining the tag team titles because I got to be honest, Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable, they're both fantastic wrestlers, but they just feel kind of thrown together. Like, here's 2 guys we don't know what else to do with, so let's just put them in a match in a team and see how they do. They don't feel like an organic tag team to me. And so I'm okay with them not being the champions, but that, like you said, that match really was missing something. And if you're going to go to the trouble of putting on a 2 out of 3 falls match, let it go to the third fall. What's the point in even doing this if you're just going to, spend all your drama in this match on the first fall and then just wrap it up with a 3-second roll up? It was just, I was disappointed. So anyway, the Usos are still your SmackDown Tag Team Champions, which I'm fine with. I just don't like the way we got there. But anyway, all right. So that takes us to the 30-man over the top rope Royal Rumble match with the winner getting a shot at the champion of their choice at WrestleMania. Now, real quick, I'm just going to run down the order of how these guys were introduced into this match, okay? Your first two competitors were Rusev and Finn Balor. Then you had Rhino, Baron Corbin, Heath Slater, Elias, Cien Almas, Bray Wyatt, Big E. Ty Dillinger was supposed to be in the match, but he got jumped backstage by Owens and Zayn, and so Sami Zayn put it on himself to replace him in the match. You had Sheamus, Xavier Woods, Apollo Crews, Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, Kofi Kingston, Jinder Mahal, Seth Rollins, Matt Hardy, John Cena. The first surprise of the night was Hurricane was back. He didn't last long, though. Aiden English came into the match. Then you had Adam Cole from NXT. Randy Orton came into the match. Titus O'Neil, The Miz, Rey Mysterio made his long-awaited return to the WWE tonight and actually did fair. He looked really good in the ring tonight. Roman Reigns, Goldust, and Dolph Ziggler out of nowhere was the last entrant into the Royal Rumble. We're not going to go through every one of these eliminations. A lot of these were inconsequential anyway. But I will say that the first one eliminated tonight was Rhino. And skipping down the row, John Cena came in kind of late in the match, and he was eliminated. It was kind of funny. Leading up to this Royal Rumble match, I heard 4 names as possibilities that would win the match. And these were the only 4 names that I ever heard that were attached to winning the match. And it was Roman Reigns, John Cena, Shinsuke Nakamura, and who was the other one? And Roman Reigns. John Cena, Roman Reigns, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Finn Balor. That was the 4th one that I kept hearing might win the match. And sure enough, at the very end, they were the last 4 standing. Every one of those 4 men were the last one standing. Now, they kind of protected Cena a little bit by bringing him in late in the match. They protected Reigns by bringing him in late in the match. In fact, he was the 28th entry into the match. Your winner tonight was Shinsuke Nakamura. Do you buy or sell him being the winner of the Royal Rumble?
Honestly, with who he chose to go against, he could have went against either Brock Lesnar or AJ Styles, and I can guarantee that people would have it did not matter who he chose. People would have eaten up either way, because you can trace Brock Lesnar and Nakamura, they have history from New Japan back 12 years ago. So you have that where, Nakamura lost his title to Brock Lesnar in Japan 12 years ago. So you could go back that far. Okay. Then you have AJ Styles versus Nakamura, which is who Nakamura decided to go with, which you can trace them back to New Japan with Wrestle Kingdom 10. This is basically a rematch from Wrestle Kingdom 10. So you have the fans out there would have gotten something that has history either way.
Okay, so here's my thing. First of all, I knew that Nakamura was not going to pick Brock Lesnar, and I got to tell you why I knew that. It has been a well-known fact, and I'm just going to call it a fact because it's going to happen. It's been a well-known fact since last year's WrestleMania. I mean, and I was at last year's WrestleMania in Orlando, but before I was even out of the parking lot, I was hearing people talking about how Roman Reigns was going to face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania the next year, and I've been hearing it ever since. I see it on all the dirt sheets. I see people talking about it on forums and all that kind of stuff. It's always been Roman Reigns was going to face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. And so I figured one of 2 things was going to happen tonight. Either Roman Reigns was going to win this Rumble so that he could face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, or somebody from SmackDown was going to win it, and then Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar are going to get together some other way anyhow. Maybe Reigns wins the Elimination Chamber next month, and then he uses that as his launching off point to face Lesnar. I don't know. But once Reigns was eliminated, he was the last one eliminated, but when I saw Nakamura and Reigns looking at each other, I just had a sense that Nakamura was going to win the match. Once he won the match, I knew he was going to pick AJ Styles. First of all, the crowd is cheering, AJ Styles, and he just repeated what they said. But it was obvious to me that Nakamura was not going to leave SmackDown. So that does give me hope, though, because going back to what we talked about earlier with the AJ Styles and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn match, it gives me hope that we're finally going to move on from all that crap, because now AJ Styles has got to worry about Shinsuke Nakamura at WrestleMania. So that actually gives us an excuse to move on from that mess that we have right now on SmackDown. I hope. Now, we've seen AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura before. We've seen that match before. Nakamura fell short. So now I'm hoping that he can actually seal the deal and win the WWE Championship. That would be an amazing thing, wouldn't it?
Honestly, I think that the last time that they went together. They'd throwaway match, anything. This time, with it being on a grander stage, maybe the WWE would be willing to let them be themselves. And if they allow the wrestlers to do what feels more natural to them, then it'll be a better match either way. So
I think so, and I'll go you one better. Shinsuke Nakamura's career in WWE up to this point has felt kind of like a throwaway. They haven't really let him do much. They haven't let him be himself. He's been very tightly scripted. He's been very tightly booked, and he hasn't really had a chance to shine like I think he can. I watched him in New Japan. I know what he's capable of. I watched him in NXT. I know what he's capable of. We haven't seen what he's capable of at this level yet. Now he's got the opportunity to actually do what he does.
And he has the right quality of opponent to be able to pull it off too. So there again, both at this point, Nakamura has shown that he has the ability to achieve great things with him winning the Rumble, and now you'll be able to see more. I'm hoping this is the WWE allowing him to what he can do now that he's won the Rumble, and maybe things will start picking up, and you'll be able to see the King of Strong style instead of what we see now, instead of the Rock.
Yeah, the Rock Star.
So that's my hope.
Well, and I think AJ Styles is a better opponent for him because, okay, so he's wrestled Brock Lesnar before. Brock Lesnar 12 years ago is not Brock Lesnar today. Brock Lesnar 12 years ago used to do, moonsaults and shooting star presses, and I mean, he actually wrestled back then. Now all he is a big meathead who throws people around. That's all he does. He's got like 3 moves. He's got the German suplex, he's got the right hand, and he's got the F5. That's his 3 moves, and that's all you see him do the whole match. He just throws people around. He doesn't actually wrestle anymore. And so I can't imagine him and Shinsuke Nakamura being a good match at this point. I really can't, because Nakamura needs somebody who's technically sound to play off of, and that's not Brock Lesnar anymore.
Well,
Brock Lesnar's a 40-year-old guy who just hurls people around until they get tired, and then he F5s them and pins them.
Let me interject here with something. Nakamura does have an MMA background, so I mean, they could still put on a decent match. It would be a different style match than a lot of the fans would expect to see. It wouldn't be a WWE style match. It would be more of a New Japan style match that they put on, but they could still probably put on a good match. But the thing is you saw the WWE right now isn't letting Brock long matches like that. And if the match is going over a certain amount of time, he's being put in there with more than one opponent so that they can pick up the slack.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's WWE that isn't letting him do that. I get the impression that Brock is calling the shots on when he works, where he works, and how he works. I do. I get the impression that that's the price of doing business with Brock Lesnar at this point in his career. Here's the thing. He's not that jacked 28-year-old muscle-bound freak of nature anymore that he used to be. Okay? I mean, if you look at Brock, you look at pictures of Brock Lesnar in 2002, and then you look at pictures of Brock Lesnar now, they are not the same human being at all. He's a little more doughy now. It's clear that he takes a lot of time off between matches. And, we could get into a whole side conversation about the whole Brock Lesnar thing anyway, because when you think about it, he won the Universal Championship from Goldberg at WrestleMania last year, and he's been the champion ever since. I heard Michael Cole tonight talking about Brock Lesnar has been champion for 301 days. What an amazing accomplishment. I'm like, is it really? He's only wrestled like 4 times since then. This is only like his 4th match in 301 days, maybe his 5th. But is it really a major accomplishment? It goes back to something CM Punk said when he was a champion for 431 days. He talked about how he is the most incredible champion of all time because he wrestles night after night after night after night. He said Bruno Sammartino had the belt for 20 years, but he only wrestled 1 night a month in Madison Square Garden. So is that really as big an accomplishment as me keeping it for over a year? And I look at Brock Lesnar now. Brock Lesnar's wrestled like 5 or 6 matches in the last 9 months. That's it. And he's been the champion ever since. The guy shows up whenever he wants to. He does whatever he wants to. And he's going to keep the belt till WrestleMania. We know that now. So for me, is it really amazing that he's doing all this? I don't think so.
Brock Lesnar matches have the to be so much what they are, but every time they end up falling, you see, and it's every match that he has where if he were to just put some effort into his matches, then the match could easily be one of the higher ranked matches of the night. But instead, he takes the easier way out, I feel, by using the limited skill set he used.
Well, and I mean, that's it. He at this point in his career, he just goes in there, throws people around, and pins them. That's all he does. And that's all you're going to get out of him at this point. You know, reminds me of the conversations we used to have about Hulk Hogan and what a limited worker he was. And every time I would bring up that Hulk Hogan had 3 moves, you know, he had the clothesline, the big boot, and the leg drop, right?
Yeah.
Every time I would bring up that he only had 3 moves, somebody invariably would say, "Oh man, but you know, when he wrestled in Japan, he actually wrestled like chain wrestled and had all these moves, and he looked like a scientific wrestler," and yada yada yada. I'm like, why does everybody go to Japan and shine and then come back here and suck? Now, obviously, that's not the case with guys like Finn Balor and AJ Styles these days, but like, why did Brock Lesnar go to Japan, wrestle all these kick-ass matches, and now he's back here doing his 3 moves of doom? Why did Hulk Hogan go to Japan and come back with his 3 moves of doom? What happens in Japan that people forget their movesets?
It's not really so much what happens in Japan. It's more the formula that works with the WWE than anything. Is okay. Don't see John Cena didn't have that. Doesn't really have that many moves that he used. He started pulling out more here lately. In his more recent matches, he started doing more, but that's because it's near the end of his career. I think that what the WWE is trying to do nowadays is limit their guys' movesets. One, because it protects their investment, because at this point, people like John Cena and Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, they're investment. They're not just, another guy, they're an investment.
So this is really Vince McMahon's fault then?
I think, well, you got to look at it. Even with other guys that came from Japan and still do, they don't even let them use their full moveset over here.
That's the thing. I mean, we're not letting Shinsuke Nakamura be Shinsuke Nakamura, really.
Finn Balor, he's been watered down.
Yeah.
You have Seth Rollins was one of the best on the independent scene, and he's been watered down. I mean,
although they did let him bring back the curb stomp, so I did appreciate that.
Yeah, they brought that back with the name change, of course. And it's
right.
There's so much that the WWE is willing to allow their wrestlers to do at this point. You have these guys where they're on such a heavy schedule as is. It's not like the old days where when Hogan had the belt, where you know, you did a few tapings here and there, and, you know, you might have wrestled. Like Hogan, he might have shown up with the belt and wrestled once a month, but he did appearances on TV otherwise. The champions these days, besides Brock Lesnar, haven't really been afforded that luxury. They've had, like CM Punk said, they've had to come in and night out wrestle. And it does take
even Lesnar, you know, when he's not in the middle of an angle, he's just not there at all. You know, we'll go 2 months sometimes without even seeing Brock Lesnar, and that's why I'm glad we have somebody like The Miz, who's the Intercontinental Champion, because somebody's got to carry the water on Raw when Lesnar decides to take 2 or 3 months off and go home with the Universal title. You know, since we're already talking about Lesnar anyway, we'll double back on the Raw Tag Team title match, but Lesnar versus Kane versus Strowman. Now, there's not really a whole lot needs to be said about this match, because 2 weeks ago, or even longer maybe, I said that the only reason, you know, everybody was complaining about Kane's 48 years old. His day is over. Why are they giving him a main event push? Why is he in this match? He shouldn't even be a part of blah, blah, blah. He was in that match for one specific reason. He was in the match so that Lesnar could retain the title and Strowman did not have to take the pinfall. Kane was only in that match to protect both Lesnar and Strowman, because the plan is Lesnar is going to wrestle Roman Reigns at WrestleMania for the Universal title. And so Lesnar had to retain the title in this match, and they didn't want Strowman taking the pinfall. That's why Kane was there. He was there to do the job, and he did. And it went down. Now, look, it was a brutal match, okay? They crushed both announce tables in that match. And I knew, you know, we all knew that the Spanish announce table was going to take it at some point, right? That happens almost every pay-per-view. But they crushed both announce tables in that match. And in the end, Lesnar ended up pinning Kane, and there you have it. So that's why Kane was in the match. Anybody who's mad that Kane got a main event push, quote unquote, he was only there so that Lesnar could win and Strowman didn't have to lose. And to nail that point home, after Lesnar walked back up the ramp with the title on his shoulder, Strowman screamed at him, "You didn't beat me," which was the whole point of this thing. Now, what I don't understand is, like, it's ridiculous. It was predictable. I saw it coming weeks ago, and we got exactly what I said it was going to be. And I'm not a genius. Everybody was saying it. Everybody knew that Lesnar was going to retain. It was almost like they just had to have him there, and that title had to be defended because it's the Royal Rumble. But we're really just going to be stuck in neutral until WrestleMania with Brock Lesnar. It was a total waste of time. It really was.
I don't think they showcased Bronson properly in that match. If anything, this match probably had more of an opposite effect than what they wanted to his character, because they've been building him up. He's been flipping semi-trucks, pulling down staging, and then to have this match where Braun didn't absolutely dominate both parties for most of the match, because he didn't. It was more in. At one point, you even saw Braun being put through the tables by Lesnar. So no, Braun did not dominate like they were building it up to where he should have. This should have been one of those where Lesnar barely squeaked by. Instead, it was a mess.
But again, I think that's the price of doing business with Brock Lesnar. I think there's probably something in his contract that stipulates that he will be the champion of whatever show he's on for X number of months out of every year, and that when he wins a match, he's got to look like the strongest guy in the room doing it. And that if he ever does lose a match, it has to be a triple threat so that he doesn't take the pinfall. Remember the year that Seth Rollins cashed in his Money in the Bank at WrestleMania while Reigns and Lesnar were fighting? Who did Seth Rollins pin to take that championship? He pinned Reigns.
Yes.
He didn't even pin Lesnar. Lesnar lost the title at WrestleMania without taking the pinfall. So even when Lesnar does lose the championship, it's somebody else taking the pinfall. And my thing is Brock Lesnar really worth all this?
Well, you saw what happened at the end of the night with Rousey, so.
Yeah, but to finish my thought on Lesnar, I just think that the shine of him being the former UFC heavyweight champion is off at this point. I don't care anymore. The guy's eating up pay-per-views. He's not showing up enough on free TV. And when he does show up on free TV, he never wrestles. I mean, CM Punk was wrestling on Raw every week when he was the champion. John Cena was wrestling on Raw every week when he was the champion.
I think
AJ Styles wrestles on SmackDown every week now that he is the champion. Brock Lesnar never wrestles on free TV. He only ever wrestles at pay-per-views, and only like every other one at that.
I think if the WWE were smart, they would allow his contract to lapse at the end of this run with it, and not try for a renewal, because that would free up $12 million that they could go and spend and reinvest in their programming.
NXT.
Which is a great show. If anybody watched it or didn't watch it, you need to go watch NXT TakeOver Philadelphia. It was honestly a good show. Just don't watch the women's match. You can skip over that. But other than that, it was a great show.
Yeah. So I'm at this point, I think they're only keeping Lesnar around so they don't lose Paul Heyman. He's the far more interesting of the two of them.
They could put Paul Heyman and anybody else. I mean, there are so many people right now that could benefit from having a mouthpiece, an actual, real manager that knows what they're supposed to say, how to get a crowd to react. There are so many other people that need it besides Lesnar on their roster anyways. They could still keep Heyman around and put him with, oh my God, think of the heat they could give if they put him with Mojo Rawley.
Yeah, or really put him with Shinsuke Nakamura since he doesn't speak English.
Oh, if they turn him heel, yeah. Yeah, if they turn him heel, go for it. So, yeah. I mean, you could have him with any number of heels at this point in time, and he would be able to get them over as a heel, no problem. And I don't understand why this is something I don't understand. You have a mouthpiece like Heyman, but you're wasting it with Brock Lesnar.
Well, and this is how lazy Lesnar's gotten. I watched him back in 2001, 2002. He cut promos on his own back then. I saw him cut a fantastic promo in UFC after he beat Frank Mir. He cut a promo where, at the end of the fight, he said, I think after this, I'm going to go jump on my wife. I mean, he cut this fantastic heel promo in UFC, got him in trouble with Dana White. Brock Lesnar knows how to talk, but he's so lazy now that he just lets Paul Heyman talk for him. He's so lazy now that he only does 3 moves. He's so lazy now that he only shows up for like 4 pay-per-views a year. He's so lazy now that he only shows up to Raw like every other month. And when he shows up, he just stands there while Paul Heyman talks. And then he might get into a pull-apart brawl with somebody. That lasts 2 or 3 minutes, and then you don't see him again for 3 or 4 weeks. Brock Lesnar has gotten so lazy that he's not worth the effort. He's not worth hijacking the whole Raw program right now. Without Brock Lesnar being the champion, guys like The Miz would have a more believable shot at winning the title. Braun Strowman would already be a champion by now, and should have been. I mean, come on. Brock Lesnar is taking up a lot of real estate here, and I don't feel like we're getting a return back on that. But anyway, that's it for Brock Lesnar. So doubling back on the match that happened right before that, Cesaro and Sheamus have defeated Seth Rollins and Jason Jordan to win the Raw Tag Team Championships for the 4th time. Something really kind of weird happened in that match, too, where I don't know if Jason Jordan really got hurt in that match or if he's just slow playing an angle where he ends up turning heel like everybody hopes he will. But he wound up getting run face first into one of the ring posts. And after that, he was basically useless the rest of the night. Seth Rollins ended up having to wrestle basically a handicap match for the rest of the night. And then he ended up getting beat and they lost the titles. Go.
The rumor has it that Jason Jordan has been hurt now for the past few weeks. That's why they gave him time on airtime last on Raw, but he didn't. And they've given him time at other shows where he was just standing outside the ring and he hasn't done anything. So the rumor is that he's actually hurt, and they're just not letting people.
Seems like everybody that teams with Seth Rollins lately gets hurt. I mean, Dean Ambrose is out for the next 9 months.
Yeah.
So,
but if you go back and watch Raw for the past couple of weeks, you'll notice that he hasn't had any real in-ring time at all. And then with this match here, as you said, it was very weird where Rollins wrestled to the match himself after a bump in a spot that normally, it'll take somebody out for 10 to 15 minutes, but it doesn't keep them out of the entire match like it kept him out.
Yeah, it didn't look like he was just selling an injury only to make the hot tag comeback, because he got tagged into the match and then he tagged himself into the match, and then he got in there and kind of staggered around a little bit, and then he got his clock cleaned, and that was the end of the match. So I don't know. For what it's worth, it's worth mentioning, by the way, that Seth Rollins had himself a pretty bad night tonight. I mean, not only did he end up dropping the tag titles with Jason Jordan to Sheamus and Cesaro, but doubling back to the Royal Rumble match, he got dumped out of the match by Roman Reigns. His own Shield buddy dumped him out of the match. So a bad night for Seth Rollins all around.
I think that the WWE missed their cue with that elimination as well. I think the crowd would have given a better reaction to Roman Reigns being eliminated right after that by somebody. Then, while it was great, you could tell that the crowd really wasn't feeling Roman Reigns being in the match at all anyway. So I think the crowd there would have been happier had he been eliminated right after Raw.
Well, there was a funny moment in the match when Cena and Reigns faced each other, and the whole crowd started chanting, "You both suck." So, yeah.
Yeah, Cena was very vocal during the first time, and you could tell that, when they first started it up, him being the ring general he is, you could basically see him yelling at the two fan favorites in the crowd. I ain't gonna say faces because, John Cena's a fake, whatever. At this point in time, who the crowd was behind, he basically was yelling at them, "Come hit us, knock the shit out of us."
Yeah, he was trying to coach them through the match, and they kind of got swallowed up in the moment, it seemed. But, well, we need to get to the women's match now, and just by comparison, the men's Royal Rumble match was really kind of just lackluster and blah to me. I mean, okay, Shinsuke Nakamura won, that's a big deal, but again, the 4 names that I kept hearing over and over again might win the match were the last 4 standing. So, and really, when you think about it, the only 2 major surprise entrants in the match tonight were Hurricane, who lasted about 30 seconds, and Rey Mysterio, who lasted longer and looked good doing it, but we still don't know whether he was just back for that one appearance or whether he's back. I guess we'll find out going forward. My guess would be that if he's back, he'll end up on SmackDown and not Raw, because Raw's just big meatheads at this point. You know, you've got Reigns and you've got Lesnar and Strowman, and that they're dominating the top of that card right now. So unless you intend to make Rey Mysterio a cruiserweight, which I highly doubt at this point, then I'm just guessing he'll go to SmackDown. But I guess we'll find out going forward. But the women's match, on the other hand, was very different. We had a lot of surprise entrants in this match tonight, and I'll just run down a few of the surprise entrants. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth entrant in the match, Lita. Now, what was interesting about Lita being in the Women's Royal Rumble match tonight, it was not a surprise to me that she was in the match because, you know, you figure that if anybody deserved to be there, it would be her. She laid the groundwork for what we see today with women's wrestling. But I was at Raw 25, and they brought out a lot of the female legends, and she was not among them. Trish Stratus came out, Michelle McCool came out, Kelly Kelly came out, I think Tori Wilson was out there. So you had a few people come out there, but Lita was not among them on Monday night. But then she did show up for this match tonight. So Lita was a surprise in this match. Tori Wilson came out for the match. The biggest surprise to me was Molly Holly. Molly Holly showed up, and she looked good. She still had the moves, and she lasted a little while. She was the 10th person eliminated in the Rumble, but I did not expect Molly Holly to be there. A couple more. Let's see. Michelle McCool was in the match. Vicky Guerrero showed up in the match. And, of course, she did her usual, excuse me, stick and, you know, pissed everybody off, and then they all dumped her out of the ring. Kelly Kelly was in the match. Jacqueline was in the match for a throwback. Beth Phoenix showed up tonight and she had a real moment where she squared off with Nia Jax, and I mean the entire arena erupted when that happened. You had this is awesome chance. She actually got Nia Jax up on her shoulders at one point and tried to dump her out of the ring. Didn't quite succeed in doing that. Let's see. We also had the Bella Twins. Both of them were back tonight. I kind of expected Nikki to be there. I wasn't sure if Brie was going to wrestle. She just had a kid, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. So I wasn't sure if she was in good wrestling shape, but she showed up ready to go and did well. And then you had Trish Stratus was the number 30 entrant in the match. So what did you think of those surprise entrants in the match?
Well, to be honest, I think that the WWE did a great job with their surprise entrants. I think that, like I was telling my wife earlier, they only had one real quote-unquote joke entrant into the Women's Royal Rumble, and that was Vicky. And otherwise, some of the legends that back in the day a lot of people criticized for not being able to wrestle showed that, you know, maybe it wasn't that they couldn't wrestle, maybe it was that they were doing what they were being told to do by Vince. Because you had, the legends came out there, and even though Kelly Kelly was in some generic ass gear that she probably bought 10 minutes before the show, you know, she didn't look bad. She looked better than she did 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So you could honestly, that's just to that point. I mean, the women of this, WWE did a great job picking. They didn't pick people based on just, this is eye candy from back in the day that couldn't do anything. They did good with people that could actually go in.
Right, and I got to tell you, the two biggest surprises to me performance-wise were Molly Holly again. She actually eliminated Sarah Logan, who was the third entrant into the match, and Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus eliminated Natalya, and there was a really awesome moment where Trish and Mickie James squared off with each other, and again the crowd exploded. See, I love smart crowds that know their history. So when Trish and Mickie James were standing nose to nose, and the crowd exploded, they remembered the feud that they had 10, 12 years ago, and Mickie ended up getting eliminated by Trish. It was just one of those really cool moments where I didn't want either one of them to win the Rumble, and I didn't think either one of them would, but it was just one of those cool throwback moments where, you know, the crowd is following what they tried to do there. And so look, top to bottom, this was a really well-booked match. I was okay with Vicky coming out and being a joke entrant because bottom line is they had to fill 30 slots. And, you know, you knew they were going to have to stretch a little bit to get 30 people into this match. So I figured we would see some legends come back. There were some real Hall of Famers in this, though. Molly Holly's a Hall of Famer. Trish Stratus is a Hall of Famer. Lita's a Hall of Famer. Beth Phoenix is a Hall of Famer. So they had to bring in some Hall of Famers to fill out 30 slots. But they also brought in some wrestlers from NXT. Like we had Kairi Sane. We had Ember Moon was in the match. So I thought they did a good job of mixing up SmackDown, Raw, NXT, and some of your legends. And then they brought in Vicky for a little bit of comic relief, which was fine because that match was so intense top to bottom that it was okay to have sort of a little intermission there where they all teamed up to dump Vicky out of the ring. It was okay to kind of break the tension a little bit and then build it back up toward the end. In the end, your final three participants were the Bella Twins, Nikki and Brie, and Asuka. Those were your final three. And at that point, the rumors that Asuka was going to win this thing from weeks back, it was pretty obvious that neither of the Bella Twins was going to do it. Really, the only dramatic part of that final three was when Nikki decided to dump Brie out of the ring and take on Asuka by herself. And it's every woman for herself, and everybody gets that. Brie did not look too happy though when Nikki dumped her out of the ring. And frankly, I'm not sure why why she didn't have Brie help her get rid of Asuka, and then they could have figured that out between them. But Nikki decided to go it alone, and Asuka ended up dumping her over. Asuka is your very first ever Women's Royal Rumble winner. And it's worth mentioning, by the way, and I didn't connect the dots on this until somebody brought it up to me a few minutes ago because I'm just slow. But both of our Royal Rumble winners tonight are both Japanese.
Well, it is definitely a new age in wrestling. You could see, 10, 15 years ago, most of the time the Oriental characters didn't, they used them as characters. They were a character. Oh, we got the Japanese character. They had a fucking sumo wrestler who wasn't even Japanese, and he wasn't even a sumo wrestler, really.
Oh, Yokozuna, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and they used the Japanese culture and character 10, 15 years ago as a gimmick, as just another comedy act, and even here a little bit more recently with Kai and Tai, they use them as a joke, and now you can actually see that a change in the way that the characters, you can see a change in the way that the WWE use people of different cultures, and it's not a bad thing for wrestling because it can only go up from here. We can only have better quality wrestling from here instead of having a bunch of cartoon characters. We have wrestlers, and even though Vince wants to say it's sports entertainment, I'm with the Revival 100% here. They're wrestlers.
Yeah, and we've come a long way from Jimmy Wang Yang. Okay, we really have. I think wrestlers of all cultures, obviously both genders, I think wrestlers of all persuasions at this point are being treated with respect, and they're being treated seriously now. And I like that. I like the fact that they don't try to turn your ethnicity into some kind of a cartoon character anymore. I like the fact that Shinsuke Nakamura is being treated as a serious threat to the WWE Championship because now he has a shot at it at WrestleMania. He gets to headline WrestleMania now. I like the fact that Asuka is being given the respect she clearly deserves for the skill that she has. And she's probably going to be the women's champion. Now, I will say that, at the end of the men's Royal Rumble, they asked Shinsuke Nakamura, who are you going to take on? Because he could choose either Lesnar or Styles, and he chose Styles. They asked Asuka the same question at the end of the women's Royal Rumble, and she never got to answer it. And the reason she never got to answer it is because before she could, out comes Ronda Rousey.
And
I'm going to pause for dramatic effect here because out comes Ronda Rousey, and they had asked her earlier this week, are you going to be in the Royal Rumble, or are you going to be part of that match? And she said, I can't. I'll be in Colombia filming a movie. I'm on my way to Colombia right now to film a movie. That's Colombia, the country, not like Columbia, South Carolina. She said she was on her way to South America to film a movie and that she wasn't even going to be in the country. And that turned out to be a lie because she showed up after the Women's Royal Rumble tonight. Now, her appearance, your opinion.
Her opinion, in my opinion, her appearance, it makes things a little bit more interesting because you notice she didn't go after either one of the champions. She didn't try to shake Alexa. She didn't try to shake. Whose hand did she try to shake?
Asuka.
Who slapped her hand away?
Asuka.
Now you see what I think they're setting up?
Yeah, I guess, but I got a couple. I have a couple of observations about this whole thing. First of all, when Ronda Rousey came out at WrestleMania 3 years ago, The Rock brought her in out of the audience, and she wound up squaring off with Triple H and Stephanie. She wound up judo flipping Triple H, and then she caught Stephanie in a standing armbar. That was intense Ronda Rousey. Now, I think she was still the bantamweight champion in UFC back then, so she hadn't gotten her head kicked off her shoulders by Holly Holm yet, and she certainly hadn't had it knocked off her shoulders by Amanda Nunes yet. So that was undefeated women's bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey that they pulled out of the audience at WrestleMania. And she was intense, and she was pissed off, and she was the Ronda Rousey that we want to see. The Ronda Rousey we got tonight was giggly, smiley, waving, slapping hands with the crowd, trying to be buddies with Asuka. Is that the Ronda Rousey we're going to get in WWE? Is she going to try to be a face? Is she going to try to be basically Bayley with a leather jacket? Is that what we're really going to get from Ronda freaking Rousey? Because that's what we got tonight.
It definitely made it appear as if she was trying to be a face, and I don't know if it was just because it was, basically confirming everything that she had signed, or if this is actually going to be her character. But we'll get to this is the beauty of it tomorrow night. Hopefully, we'll have more of Ronda Rousey up there, and we'll be able to get a better feel of what her actual character will be instead of what it felt like to me at the end, especially with how long they stayed on it. It was more of an official announcement or signing.
I mean, I guess so, but more questions than answers after that Royal Rumble. We just watched the most fantastic match of the night, a history-making match. The right woman won the match. We still have no idea who she's going to challenge for the title. I'm assuming it's going to be Alexa Bliss. I assume that she's not going to move over to SmackDown and challenge Charlotte Flair, although I think that would be a better match. I really do. I think Charlotte and Asuka would be a much better match than Asuka and Alexa Bliss. Then you throw Ronda Rousey into the mix. She got dissed by Asuka. Then she went and shook hands with Stephanie McMahon. She's slapping hands with the fans in the crowd. She's smiling and giggling and all happy, bubbly, whatever. And it's like, I don't want bubbly Ronda Rousey. I want pissed off, ass-kicking Ronda Rousey, and we didn't get that tonight. So is she just out of her element and doesn't know how to act, or is this all part of an angle that they're trying to build toward? I guess we're going to have to wait to find out, but I already am concerned about what I'm seeing.
I didn't get the Asuka I wanted to see tonight either. I mean, Asuka that I wanted to see would have snatched both of them titles down as soon as the both champion raised them up, and then like, I want them both. That's the Asuka I wanted to see. We didn't see it.
You know what would have really been? You know what would have really kind of helped me along with all of that confrontation when Rousey came out and the whole Asuka and Charlotte and Alexa thing would have been if they'd all gotten into a 4-woman brawl right there in the ring.
That would have, unless it's because they're waiting for Rousey to get more training in, and because she kept pointing at the WrestleMania sign, so that's probably going to be when she actually wrestles her first match. It's probably going to be Mania. So, and that gives her. That gives her a couple months training, so Well, I pray to God she's at least at the Performance Center, working on her craft. I really do. And this is kind of the danger of bringing somebody in from another walk of life to be a wrestler. We've seen Shaquille O'Neal come in and try to wrestle, and he didn't look good doing it. Back in the old WCW days, I saw Dennis Rodman and Karl Malone wrestle, and they didn't look good doing it. It's a rare thing that you can bring somebody in from another walk of life, put them in a wrestling ring, and they just go with it. Now, Ronda Rousey's been a wrestling fan her whole life. She's obviously been in combat sports with UFC, and she's a judoka and all this other stuff. Got that. But, dude, wrestling requires theatrics that I don't know if she's capable of. Because what I saw tonight looked like somebody who was overacting and not hitting the mark. That's what I saw. What I saw tonight was somebody who was hitting the mark very hard. She was marking very hard tonight. Very hard. She was marking.
What I mean by hitting the mark, I mean she was trying to be a certain thing and she wasn't getting there with it. I didn't get the sense that she was comfortable out there. To me, she kept pointing at the WrestleMania sign, but you could see her finger shaking. It's like she was nervous, and her facial expressions didn't match what she was trying to do. And I needed to see a badass aura from her, and I didn't get that tonight at all. She looked more nervous than anything. And somebody needed to punch somebody when all four of those women were in the ring. Because you got Asuka, who's challenging for one of those titles, Ronda Rousey showing up to announce her presence, and that she's going to complicate life for everybody. But it just turned into one of these awkward, everybody's kind of standing around shuffling their feet and didn't really know what to do, and then we just fade to black. Like, I needed to see somebody punch somebody to break that tension.
Yeah, the ending didn't really fit the build-up towards it. Like I said, I would have rather, even before Rousey's music hit, I would have liked to have seen Asuka grab for both titles and snatch them both down. That way, it would have initiated some sort of moment there where the fans would have just reacted, and then while they're reacting off of that, for Rousey's music to hit would have just blown the roof off the place. And I don't think they handled it right. They could have handled it better at the end.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm just going to point this out, and then we can wrap the show up. If Ronda Rousey is going to come out to an Angry Joan Jett song, she needs to be an Angry Ronda Rousey. I don't give a damn about my bad reputation. It's supposed to be a song about a girl who will punch people in the face if they don't like her. Okay, and what we got instead was, again, her smiling and waving and giggling, and it didn't match. That whole thing just seemed off. And you brought that up about other parts of the show tonight. There was so much of the show that just didn't feel well put together or well thought out. And for the Royal Rumble is arguably the second most important pay-per-view on the schedule all year long. And it's the first impression anybody gets of the WWE all year long because it happens in January. You need to have a tight show. I'm not saying it needs to be like WrestleMania quality, but it needs to be Royal Rumble quality, and I don't feel like it was tonight. The men's Royal Rumble match was lackluster. Both tag team matches were kind of whatever. The WWE Championship match was confusing. The Universal Championship match was wholly predictable. The women's match really stole the show, and it was easy to steal, believe me. But it stole the show. It was fantastic. Honestly, if that's the Ronda Rousey we were going to get, couldn't they have saved that for tomorrow night?
They probably
we just ended the show on we should have just ended the show on a fantastic high tonight. We just saw a historic and fantastic match. Let's end it right there, and then we'll bring Rousey out tomorrow night and see what she's got. That would have been my preference.
It would have been better off to do it like that. Honestly, it killed some of what the women had accomplished, I believe, when she came out, because that was, basically Asuka's mom anyways. And then for it to be cut short by Ronda Rousey, and we don't even know if she's actually going to be, she might be a draw right now, but if she stinks in the ring, then she's not going to be a draw for long.
This whole thing just feels like a Ronda Rousey experiment. I hope they're not putting too many eggs in the Ronda Rousey basket. That's why it's a good thing Asuka won the Royal Rumble tonight, because she's the obvious path going forward. And you have interesting matchups between her and, I guess, Alexa Bliss on Raw. Or if she wanted to go to SmackDown, she could match up with Charlotte. You've got Sasha Banks on Raw. You have Nia Jax on Raw, who, by the way, I'm not sure exactly what the plan is with her anymore. I thought she was going to dominate and end up winning the title at some point. But with Asuka showing up and running the show now, it seems like the Nia Jax train has kind of left the station at this point. So, try to plug Rousey in, see where she fits, see if this works out, see if she really blows our socks off of this whole thing. If she doesn't, then you can just kind of quietly make that go away, and we can move forward with the program that we already have. So, all in all, the show was what it was tonight. Again, just to wrap things up, the Women's Royal Rumble match was freaking awesome. I loved seeing the mix of legends coming back and the NXT stars and Raw and SmackDown stars. The right person ended up winning the Rumble. It had to be Asuka. It was kind of an obvious outcome anyway, but I do like the fact that they got there the way they did. Welcome back, Brie Bella, I guess. I don't know if there's any long-term plan for her going forward, but we're going to learn so much more about the fallout from Royal Rumble going forward on Raw tomorrow night, SmackDown Tuesday night, and hopefully that'll help shake out some of the confusion and some of the questions that we have from tonight's pay-per-view. Hey, listen, I want to thank all of you for listening to the Royal Rumble recap tonight. CW, thank you for standing in with me and helping me get through this show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, not a problem, man. Listen, we've got a full schedule of pay-per-views coming up this year, obviously, and right now it's all pointed toward WrestleMania in New Orleans in April. So In the meantime, I don't know if we'll do another one of these pay-per-view recaps. We've got Elimination Chamber coming up next month, the Raw exclusive pay-per-view. So we'll see how well this show does and if we need to do more pay-per-view recaps. In the meantime, thank you all for listening. This is Frank Vaughn with the Royal Rumble recap on the Angry Marks Podcast Network. Good night.